the Theodosians, the first imperial Roman dynasty to rule an officially divided empire and shape the characteristics of the later Eastern Empire. Welcome to Eastern Rome Summarized, and today we'll talk about this incohesive but influential family, from Emperor Theodosius I to Marcianus. Theodosius was the man who separated the Roman Empire's territory forever and thus also its fate. The Eastern Empire was then allowed to prosper and thrive, while the West fell into rapid decline, for they were not tied together in the same boat anymore. Last time, we stopped at the point where Theodosius grudgingly accepted Magnus Maximus as co-Augustus. We begin today with how Theodosius eliminated this usurper and later ones, becoming the undisputed master of the Roman world. Theodosius raised taxes in 387 to secure funds for the military, but the rowdy Antiochians revolted, making the emperor deal with them ruthlessly. Magnus saw this chaos as an opportunity and invaded Italy, causing Valentinian II and his family to flee east. This Theodosius could not allow. He headed west with his Frankish general Arbogast and sent his other great general, the half-Vandal Stilicho, to take care of the Sassanids in the east. In 388, Theodosius defeated Magnus and had the usurper executed in Aquileia. He then stayed in Mediolanum to help young Valentinian with imperial affairs until 391, when he made Arbogast the Magister Militum of the West to rule as Valentinian's regent. This wasn't a good idea. Valentinian didn't want to be just a figurehead, he wanted real authority, which Arbogast refused to give him at all. His complaints to Theodosius and Bishop Ambrose were ignored. After he tried but failed to remove his puppet master from power, Valentinian was found hanged in 392. We don't know whether that was suicide or murder. Tensions built up between East and West. Theodosius and his wife Galla seemed convinced the Magister Militum assassinated Valentinian. Though Arbogast denied this, he did feel threatened by the Eastern Augustus, so he made the first play by elevating a Western Augustus of his own, Eugenius. The two tried again to play nice with Theodosius, to no effect. In 393, they seized Italy, and Theodosius named his son Honorius as Emperor of the West, before preparing for war against the usurpers. Get ready for another civil war, one with the decisive battle that ended pagan Rome forever, the Battle of Frigidus. I suppose I should explain why the following battle, which Theodosius won, had such an impact. Theodosius was a pious Nicene Christian, maybe even zealously so, especially after he ordered the massacre of Thessaloniki in 390, that resulted in the city's Gothic garrison slaying 7,000 Romans. This atrocious act made him fear for his soul and strengthened his faith even more, and so, in 391, he banned paganism. Yes, he outlawed the traditional Roman religion and punished those who follow it. The Serapeum and possibly the Library of Alexandria were destroyed in the ensuing fights between pagans and Christians. The mostly Christian dynasties didn't really mind the emperor's new law, but anti-Theodosian sentiment rose in the more pagan Western Empire. Eugenius, despite being a Christian himself, had no choice but to advertise his war as a justified defense of Rome's pagan traditions to raise support, which is why the usurper's defeat is remembered as the triumph of Christianity over paganism. The army of Arbogast and Eugenius clashed with Theodosius and his Gothic ally Alaric's at Frigidus in 394. Though both sides suffered heavy losses, the battle was going much better for the Western forces. That is, until what seemed to be a miracle happened. Arbogast's men deserted Theodosius one night, and the next day a bora blew along the valley from the east. This wind was so strong, the arrows of the Western troops flew right back at them. The Eastern army broke through the lines and won the battle. Both usurpers died shortly afterwards. Thus, Theodosius gained control of both halves of the empire for only 4 months. On January 17, 395, the Augustus died from illness. He gave his young sons, Arcadius and Honorius, the Eastern and Western Empire, and named his best general Stilicho as regent for them both. Sadly, Stilicho was only able to assume regency over Honorius, as Arcadius already fell under the influence of Praetorian prefect Rufinus. And honestly, the imperial brothers hardly did anything during their reign. They were just weak-willed puppets that the court members fought for control over. And now, let's talk about Arcadius and his successors in the Eastern Roman Empire. Rufinus schemed to become co-emperor by having Arcadius marry his daughter, but the plan failed because the eunuch Eutropius made the young emperor fall in love with Aelia Evdoxia first, who Arcadius married. Rufinus and Eutropius no doubt hated each other, but guess who they hated more? Stilicho, the noble regent of the West. Remember Alaric, the Gothic ally of Theodosius? Well, he was sour that he didn't get much Roman recognition, so he shamelessly plundered Greece. Stilicho took it upon himself to help the East, almost beating Alaric. Almost, that is, if Rufinus didn't convince Arcadius to order Stilicho's withdrawal and handing over of Gothic mercenaries. The Goths, led by Gainas, assassinated Rufinus when the prefect received them near Constantinople. Eutropius replaced Rufinus as the emperor's advisor and had Arcadius declare Stilicho as a public enemy in 397. He made Alaric the Magister Militum per Illyricum, essentially making the Goth only Stilicho's problem. In 399, Eutropius was elected consul after he led a successful campaign against the Huns, but the fact that a eunuch could occupy a position of such prestige angered many Romans. Eutropius was exiled but later killed. We're now officially into the 5th century. Gainas, who was causing the empire a great deal of trouble the past few years, was killed by Huns. His head was sent to Arcadius, who ordered a column built in his name in honor of his victory over Gainas. Empress Eudoxia became the emperor's next advisor, after the previous ones died. She was the first of many imperial women who were more relevant than the actual emperors, most of whom were incompetent for the next few decades. Eudoxia clashed frequently with John Chrysostom, the beloved archbishop of Constantinople who hated her extravagant lifestyle. In 404, Eudoxia finally couldn't stand Chrysostom anymore, and Arcadius exiled him without consulting any Western bishops. This caused Honorius, influenced by the Pope of Rome, to break up with the East. The brothers never spoke again. Eudoxia died later that year in childbirth, leaving Arcadius vulnerable to domination by court members again. But thankfully, this time it was the Praetorian prefect of the East, Flavius Anthemius, a remarkably competent man. Anthemius tried to make peace with Stilicho in the West, but by this time, you can't blame Stilicho for being done with the Eastern Court's shenanigans. Besides, Stilicho himself would soon be betrayed and executed by Honorius, making the reunification of the empire impossible. Arcadius hung around for a while, with Anthemius administering his empire for him until he died in 408. He was succeeded by his 7-year-old son Theodosius II. Theodosius is a massive upgrade compared to his father, but as he is still too young to rule, Anthemius acted as his regent. As Rome had just been sacked by Alaric in 410, Anthemius worried for the fate of Constantinople. He ordered the construction of a new set of walls to protect the city from any attack and expand its territory. These new walls are called the Theodosian walls, named after Emperor Theodosius. This superstructure, consisting of one large unbreakable inner wall, 2 shorter outer walls, and a moat, was finished in 413, and it defended Constantinople for a millennium. Around 414, Anthemius just disappeared from the historical records. The next person to aid Theodosius was none other than his sister Aelia Pulcheria. Growing up, Pulcheria watched her mentally deficient father sit around uselessly all day while her flamboyant mother and other ministers told him what to do. She would not allow her little brother to succumb to the same fate, so she assumed regency over Theodosius at only 15 years old and taught her brother how to behave like a proper Roman emperor. Pulcheria also became Augusta and took a vow of virginity, convincing her sisters to do the same. Meanwhile, in Alexandria, Bishop Cyril stirred up so much religious unrest that the great philosopher Hypatia was murdered by a Christian mob in 414. Her death shocked the empire, and Theodosius launched an investigation right away. Cyril escaped punishment, and his fanatical Paterpolani brotherhood, who were possibly Hypatia's assassins, received only a light one. Talk about justice. In 421, the death of Persian king Isdigerdis, who had acted as the young emperor's guardian since the death of Arcadius, turned Roman-Sassanid relations sour again. When Theodosius dealt with his eastern neighbors, his attention turned north, towards the Huns, who were becoming a bigger threat by the day. The Huns agreed not to attack the Eastern Empire in exchange for mountains of gold, so Theodosius had no choice but to pay them off, and it worked for a while. In midst of all this, 20-year-old Theodosius figured that he'd need a wife. He entrusted the matchmaking to his sister. Pulcheria met an Athenian girl in Constantinople, whose intelligence and eloquence impressed her so much, she decided this girl Athenais was the right pick. She wasn't wrong. The emperor fell in love immediately. Athenais was renamed Aelia Eudokia upon her conversion to Christianity and married Theodosius. Pulcheria and Eudokia got along well until the latter was named Augusta in 423, making them rivals for power and influence over the emperor. The Augustae also engaged in a sort of piety competition that lasted for the rest of Eudokia's stay in Constantinople. While the imperial ladies were trying to surpass each other in philanthropy and religious devotion, another one arrived at Theodosius' court. She was his aunt Placidia, who fled east with her children to escape from her creepy incestuous brother Honorius. Honorius died a while after Placidia's arrival in Constantinople, and the heirless Western emperor was succeeded by Ioannis, elevated by the Patricius Castinus. Placidia convinced Theodosius to support her son Valentinian to the throne instead, and the Augustus agreed in 424, sending his Magister Militum Ardabor to defeat Ioannis. The war gave rise to Ardabor's son Aspar and made Valentinian III Augustus of the West in 425. Placidia returned west with her son to serve as his regent. With matters in the west settled, Theodosius could focus on affairs of Constantinople. Encouraged by Ezechia, he founded the Pandidacterion, the first university in the world. In 429, he commissioned a collection of all Roman laws since the reign of Constantine and compiled them into one universal law code, the Codex Theodosianus. It was published and used in both halves of the empire in 438, and would form a basis for Justinian's Corpus Juris Civilis in the future. In 430, the Archbishop of Constantinople, Nestorius, was accused of heresy by Cyril of Alexandria because Nestorius allegedly claimed Christ had two separate natures instead of two unified ones. The Council of Ephesus was called to sort this out, but Cyril's meddling caused the debate to start early and Nestorius was deemed a heretic. The emperor exiled him to Egypt, but Nestorianism would live on and Monophysitism developed as a reaction to it. Things went downhill in the last 2 decades of Theodosius' reign. Western Augustus Valentinian lost North Africa to the Vandals in 435. Evdokia fell out completely with the Theodosians, and she left Constantinople forever in 443, spending the rest of her life doing charity in Jerusalem. The departure of his beloved wife, probably caused by his sister Pulcheria, made Theodosius sad and uninterested in state affairs. Pulcheria lost favor at court as well. Worst of all, Attila, the scourge of God, became leader of the Huns and terrorized the Romans. The Hun horrifically ravaged the Balkans, committing atrocities all the way on his quest to sack Constantinople. The Theodosian walls were damaged by an earthquake in 447, so you can imagine the sheer terror of the Constantinopolitans. However, in an amazing show of Roman grit, Praetorian Prefect Constantinus organized the reconstruction of the walls in only 60 days. Attila found the city impregnable and gave up his siege, diverting his fury to the west instead. The east was secure, but in 450, the heirless Theodosius broke his spine during a riding accident. He arranged his succession with Pulcheria before he died, making Asparus Domesticus Marcianus the new emperor through non-sexual marriage with Pulcheria. Marcianus agreed to the proposition and became Augustus. Marcianus was a lucky man, for his reign was prosperous and calm. As soon as he was elevated, he stopped all tributes for the Huns, saving the east from bankruptcy, and the Huns were too occupied with the west to do anything about it. In fact, Attila had been defeated by the brilliant general Flavius Aetius in 451, and he was stopped from sacking Rome after just a conversation with Pope Leo. The end of the Hunnic threat gave Marcianus and Pulcheria the opportunity to settle religious matters. They held the Council of Chalcedon and affirmed that Jesus had a divine and human nature, united in one person, basically reaffirming the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed. However, non-Chalcedonians would continue to exist and disrupt Roman state unity. We'll talk more about them in future videos. Pulcheria died in 453 and donated all her stuff to the poor. Marcianus ruled for another 4 years, while life goes to hell in the west. Rome was sacked again, this time by the Vandal king of Africa, Gaiseric. The Eternal City was plundered for 2 weeks in 455, completely vandalized. Pope Leo was able to sway the Vandals to minimize their damage, but it doesn't change the fact that Rome was only a shadow of its former self. From now on, the birth city of the Romans would be largely irrelevant, and Roman survival depended entirely on Constantinople. On January 27, 457, Marcianus died, leaving the treasury with 7 million solidi. The Eastern Empire was on the right track to its glory, thanks to the last 2 Theodosian emperors. Next time, we will cover Eastern Rome at its peak, as well as the tragic fall of the West. The contrast between the 2 halves of the empire was brutal. I'll see you soon. As always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing and liking the video. And since I'm posting this vid around this special time of the year, depending on what you celebrate Romans, here's a late Q Saturnalia or Merry Christmas from me.